And we are live. Welcome to the NBA Deeper Dive. It is Thursday, November 7th. I am Josh Engleman. I'm joined by Chris Spags, and we are breaking down a three-game NBA slate today with one gigantic piece of news yet to come. But the good thing is, every single one of these three games, they all lock at the exact same time, 8 o'clock tonight. We're going to go for an hour right now, live before lock the following hour. We are ending NBA coverage a half hour before lock because of Monday Night Football. We'll have the NFL show after that. But you're still going to get 2 hours of coverage breaking this bad boy down. So we're going to hit it from every angle. Live before lock's going to hit it from every angle. If you don't get enough information in that time, I don't think you were ever going to get enough information. So hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Follow us both on Twitter. What's going on, Spags?
I'm excited to be here. The slate is not the most fun one, but the good news is you have a legitimate reason on a shorter slate for these shows to talk about every single player on the slate. So that'll be a good thing to do today. But the Giannis decision is so important right now, or Giannis outcome is going to be so important because if he plays, he looks like one of the best players on the slate. If he doesn't play, everything opens up underneath him. We just saw Bobby Portis go off in the scenario. Andre Jackson will be starting today for Gary Trent. We just saw him go off in the scenario. So it'll be a fun one, hopefully, even though the slate itself on its face does not look very fun.
Yeah, when I first sat down, I was just like, all right, I'm ready. Like, I really want to play this slate. Like, I've been breaking it down. I've got a good feel for it because you have a lot more time to like really dig into each time. And then I was like, oh, I have no late swap edge whatsoever. It's just get them in and sit back and watch basketball. The best part of slates like this, by far, is the fact that wherever you are in that contest at that time, is telling you the real story. It's not like, oh, I got four dudes that are playing at 10 o'clock tonight. This lineup's going to be ranked 14,000th for the entirety of this contest. I have no idea what the context is. No. Everything's moving at the same time. If you're not looking good at halftime, you're probably not looking good at the end at that point in time. It's going to be hard to dig out of that hole. So your sweat today starts at 8 o'clock and just doesn't stop. You are in it the whole way. That's kind of fun.
Yeah, no Nikola Jokic bailouts tonight, which Josh and I were so heavy on yesterday. That turned out to be, I felt like an asshole. I'm like, two fantasy points a minute for Jokic, gonna be good. He hit it. So that was the play of the day. It was fun to watch the lineups kind of move up. Unfortunately, Josh, I got D'Angelo Russell yesterday. It was the downer.
So did I. I was not aware that JJ was ready to pull the ripcord so quickly.
No, I mean, he wasn't playing any worse than Reeves was either. Like, these guys were like dead even in terms of how they were playing out there. D'Angelo, I'm sure, a little bit lazier than usual in terms of how he was playing, but it wasn't anything that noticeable. So just seemed like, I think you mentioned on the strategy show, like just seeing like JJ doesn't like him, and it's now just kind of coming to fruition a little bit more.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was the play that killed me because LeBron and Reeves, perfectly good plays filling in for all that AD usage.
Yeah. It was the value, honestly, that underperformed. I wasn't able to really get to a ton of like Io DeSumo during the swaps. That ended up being a blessing in disguise. Unfortunately, I just had more of Peyton Watson, who wasn't that good, Najee Marshall, who, didn't end up doing, exactly what I was hoping you would end up doing. It was a fun slate, though.
Yeah, I liked it. Jokic, anytime a guy scores 80 and you're like, this is my big stand, I think that tends to be a fun slate.
Yeah, it wasn't looking as good earlier in the day when I was like, well, I definitely don't have Risachet.
Yeah, I had Towns and I'm like, sick, I got Towns, but you still needed Risachet to win, which is, I mean, good for Risachet. He needed a moral victory at this point.
Sure did. All righty. Well, chat, you're here. We're around 500 people at the moment, 50 likes. I hate the we'll have 100 for 1,000. Like, the fact that the turnover for likes is like 10%, I hate it. That's insane. So many of you are here every day. How do you not just hit the thumbs up? It's not like it costs money. It's free. Free. We're not asking for a ton of support here. There's a thumb button underneath the window. You can click it and forget you did it.
Actually, good super chat to transition to in parallel.
Yes, I love transitioning. Tyler Holland. Nice little super chat. He said, I've been watching Stokastic videos and catching live shows as often as I can over the last few months and just hit my first big win last night thanks to some of your input while hand building. Second place for $7,500 in the $15. I bet that felt awesome. I hope to, and I don't mean this in a negative way, I hope you were also mad because that's the true feel of a DFS player. The satisfaction of hitting second and the absolute anger of it not being first and an exponentially higher prize point payout. So, Tyler, that's awesome. But you know what you need to do? You need to get that dub. But congratulations. You now have a lot more money to get that dub.
Well, because like Tom had told me in the beginning when I'd first started in Stokastic back in the days when Josh and I were both coming on board, and Tom's like, if you finish top 100 tournament, it's basically like finishing first because like the variance and how that goes on the home stretch of things.
Yeah.
So I feel like you finish top 100, celebrate like you finished in first, spend as much money too. Why not?
Yeah.
Exactly.
My goal is as many lineups as I can get in the top 1% of the contest and, let the chips fall where they may.
Yeah.
Which is basically what you just said. So, yeah, Tyler, congrats, man. Buy yourself something fun. Whatever guy in your lineup you like the most, get a jersey or something like that. Something to always remember it.
Ninja Creamy. That's what I'd get.
They're great.
I've heard. I've not made the splurge yet. Not ready yet. At some point.
They are so great, dude. I've got it like pretty down pat now, where I got like basically like cookie dough flavored protein powder, sugar-free cookie dough, like coffee syrup, a little bit of that in there too, with one of those Fairlife vanillas and a little bit of like vanilla or chocolate pudding mix, whatever you want to do there. Oh my God, it's so good.
Yeah, I would get too into the recipes. I don't think it'd be good for me calorically, even if it would save me on the occasional ice cream binge. But we've wasted 10 minutes of time.
Sure. Well, we have plenty of time to waste. Ryan Bozak took first down in the $8 on Friday last week and hit 5K. Your guys' input definitely helped. Appreciate you guys. That's what we're talking about, baby. It's creating winners left and right. Honestly, I don't blame you guys for listening to our advice. It's really good advice. Somebody wanted the protein powder. I think it's cookie dough, or it's at least like cookie or something. Something in that vein.
I've liked Ghost protein for cookie stuff before for like flavored protein shakes.
Let me see if I could search for a receipt. I'd have to go downstairs and look. Maybe I'll run down when you're in the middle of talking at some point in time.
That is commitment to telling this man a protein powder. I mean, I've known Noah's been in many channels of mine for years, so
I'm searching my email, but I can't find the link. I'll look a little bit further. I think I got it from Transparent Labs. Anyway, let's talk basketball. You ready?
Yeah.
My fan on? God, it feels hot in here. Anyway, Minnesota Timberwolves, 9.5-point favorites in Chicago, 226 total. Not a lot to really think about here on the Minnesota side in terms of really anything that they do. They don't have anybody on the injury report. They only play 8 guys every night if the game is competitive. So they're pretty easy to talk about. And they're getting owned like a team that does all of the things that I just said. Because everybody in that 8-man rotation is getting a pretty legitimate sum of ownership. So much so that Minnesota is the highest owned team on DraftKings by far. And they're probably the same on FanDuel. They have more ownership on FanDuel than DraftKings. There is more ownership on FanDuel than DraftKings. But let me hit you guys with where everybody's coming in. There's 2 chalk plays coming from Minnesota. Dante DiVincenzo and Mike Conley are both around 40% owned. And then Anthony Edwards, Julius Randle, Jaden McDaniels, Naz Reid, and Nickeil Alexander-Walker are all basically at 20. And then Rudy Gobert is bringing up the rear at 12%. Lots going on for Minnesota. I'm just going to throw it to you. What do you like?
I got everything pretty evenly distributed. Relative to the field, I got the most Naz Reid. Naz Reid projected for 20% ownership. I got 43. I do have him at a little more generous projection than Stokastic has him. I've got him at 29. Stokastic currently has him at 25.1, so it's a little bit closer if you use that one. But power forward center eligibility, as we always talk about here, the multi-position eligibility, kind of a key part of that. So Naz Reid, my biggest stand here. Besides that, got a little more DiVincenzo than the field. Honestly, feels a little bit of fishy play to me, just given how he's played so far in the year. But 0.8 fantasy points per minute so far for DiVincenzo on the Wolves. Despite that, though, still good usage rates. I would have him at 1 fantasy point per minute here. So I'm willing to go there, but he just comes up real easily in all the top ROI lineups. So I have a little bit of concern for DiVincenzo for that reason. Mike Conley, not a lot of minutes here. Still getting him because of the price point. He's basically another 5x value guy at 23-ish fantasy points. McDaniels, I'm with the field on. Not a big stand there. With the field on Alexander Walker as well. I think he's interesting because he's a pivot potentially to Andre Jackson chalk, which doesn't project for a ton of ownership right now, but with the box score game he had last time out and the fact he was already announced as a starter, whether Giannis is in or not, I think Jackson picks up a good amount of ownership. So looking for pivots for the value there is what I think Alexander Walker offers. But I got none of the stars really. Got like 10% of each of Edwards, Randall, and Gobert. So I don't really love that when you get the scrubs and you don't really get the stars on the team, but I think the Wolves overall, like their price points help you make lineups work. So I get why they're owned. It's just like they're not really good plays. If they were this were yesterday's slate, they wouldn't really be plays we would care about that much.
I'm a little different in
Okay.
that I have a bunch of Ant. Um, I'm more than 2xing Ant. Obviously, I wouldn't expect you to be like, oh, that's a terrible idea or anything like that. Like when it comes to really good players, whoever you're getting to usually feels pretty good. But he is the guy that I'm getting to the most, at least at this moment. He is the guy that projects as my most optimal option in and around the field on DiVincenzo. I was actually getting Conley earlier this morning. Now I'm half the field on Conley. I don't mind that too much. They haven't really been juicing his minutes in any way. He kind of plays like 23 or 24, and then they ship him on. I'm around 30 on Naz Reid. The guys that I'm not getting to, way under on Randall, under on Rudy Gobert, and way under on Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Unfortunately for me, Nickeil Alexander-Walker's value is being taken by someone on the opposite side of this game, which is not fun for me. Not somebody I'm going to advocate hard for, but it's somebody that's getting some ownership. Do
The
you
player you
expect anything
advocated
weird here
against
from Minnesota?
yesterday.
What'd you say?
I think the player you're talking about, you advocated against yesterday.
No, it's not him.
Oh, it's not Dalen Terry? Okay.
Wait, did I advocate against Dalen Terry
Yeah, I think you
yesterday?
said Dalen Terry was, or it was either yesterday with me or on the strategy show this morning. Because I do listen to your strategy shows every morning to kind of get where your head's at before we hop in here. You were like, this guy sucks. He's shit. It's either yesterday or this morning.
Hmm. I mean, I believe you that I said that. That
Things
sounds like
change.
something that I would do. I don't in any way remember saying that. But
You're not a big Dalen Terry guy. Everybody knows that about you.
well, yeah, I mean, it's not like somebody I want to play. Ended up getting 24 minutes yesterday. No Levine again today. I only gave him 20 minutes, so it's happening for reasons that it's not like I have him juiced to the gills. Josh of Los Angeles says he definitely said that. Yeah, I believe that. That was this morning. I did that earlier. That did that 12 hours ago or less than that. Yeah, that makes sense.
It is tough on like the show by yourself though, because you'll say stuff and it's like it's just kind of your brain working. You don't know it comes out, and you're like, yeah, I could see how you'd say it, not even it wouldn't even resonate.
Yeah, like I want you guys to understand something. I have no idea what comes out of my mouth on these shows. None whatsoever. It comes out free form, spur of the moment, whatever's here, and I do not retain that information by the time the show ends. I barely retain it by the time the sentence ends. So I do what I can here. So how much in aggregate of Minnesota are you getting? Are you lighter than the field here?
I think I'm generally lighter than the field here. I mean, lighter on Conley, higher on Naz Reid, a little bit higher on DiVincenzo, flat on McDaniels, flat on Walker, I guess a little bit higher. Definitely lower on Ant, lower on Randall, lower on Gobert. So like the rates for these guys like are not all the way there with how they're priced. Like for Ant, I certainly get the upside. Like no matter what slate, he could certainly go off, especially against Chicago, is playing fast enough. Doesn't play with a lot of defense. But that said, Ant's usage is down a little bit here, just a little bit under 31% on the year, 15% assist rate under that. Points per minute down to 1.12. Like I think having Randall there just really hurts the outlay for Edwards enough. And in a one game sample size, obviously, whatever. But Ant's going to be owned enough. Randall's going to be owned enough that this is not the stand for me based on my projections that I would go off. Because I'm just low on Randall and Ant compared to where Stokastic has him.
Yeah, I'm low on Randall with you, but not as much, at least as of right now, on Ant. I see a lot of we have a ton of time to get through this, so I'm going to hit these question because I saw a bunch of it of like, how aren't you getting to Randall on this slate? Like, it's a 3-game slate, whatever. It's not a personal choice. I could rerun that. I can give him an extra half minute, rerun this, and everything looks completely different. It's just a function of everything else that exists on the slate. It's not like a personal stance that I'm taking. I can say that his optimal rate is a little bit below where his ownership rate is for me, and that is probably what's driving it. I'm guessing the projection that I have doesn't support the same amount of ownership, but it's not as if I look at it and think like I don't want to get to Randall. If I had 48% of Randall instead of the 2 that I have right now, I would also not look at this any differently. It would just be another step down the line. I know that's not fun for anybody to hear, but this process for me is offloaded from anything that I actually care about.
Yeah, for me, I just have Randall projected for 2 less fantasy points. So like that's the thing for me that I know he's now away from the 5x value a little bit more than you have guys like, the Jeremy Grants of the world, let's say hypothetically. He projects close enough relative to not being a 5x value either, but still being okay. So I think for me, it's mostly you could chop up power forward a little bit more. And I do have a lot of Giannis right now too. So the Giannis part, I think if he were ruled out, maybe I would naturally get more Randall.
Yeah, I've got like 50 of him right now. The entire scope of today's slate is completely different if Giannis Antetokounmpo isn't playing today. Everything changes. We're talking about a guy that's like, what do we have him at? 70? Let's just say it's 60 for reference sake. We're talking about a $11,100 player going from the most owned dude that you can get to off the slate. All of the salary structure changes, all of the lineup construction change, everything looks different. I could end up having 50% Randall at that point. So yeah, I'm going to get that point. For anybody that cared, I texted my wife and made her go look at my protein powder. It is Gorilla Mode cookies and cream. So not cookie dough.
Gorilla Mode.
Yeah. That is the supplement brand for the guy that runs More Plates, More Dates.
I don't know what that is, but I do often think you're going Gorilla Mode, so I could see why.
Yes. Yeah. So there we go. Cookies and cream. Any kind of cookie in my ice cream, A-okay with me. Chocolate chip, Oreo style, they're all delicious. Tyler Holland knows. More Plates, More Dates is the GOAT. I mean, I guess this isn't even a team that we could talk about it like this. There's no chance you're playing anyone other than their only 8 guys.
Nah, I mean, I don't think so. I think the value guys are a little more appealing than I think you do, but yeah, the rest of the guys here, like you have Dillingham projected for 1 minute, you have Dozier projected for 1 minute, you have Josh Minolly or whatever, Josh Minute. Sorry, it's a small font here, and I'm like, I've never said this name out loud. Josh Minot here projected for 5.8 minutes. So yeah, I don't see there being anything else here. Would love there to be a more fun tournament play, but everything that's kind of a value or value adjacent is going to be owned fairly well out the wazoo.
Yeah, I know we're going to get a like, how many wolves is too many wolves question. There's no answer. As many as you want to put in there if you want to. It's a 3-game slate. But yeah, it's mostly in and around the field on these guys except for Ant. And if I'm going to have a giant stand on somebody from the Minnesota Timberwolves, I am certainly not upset that it's the best player on the team. All right, schedule for the rest of the day. I know I sort of touched on this when we got started, but wouldn't hurt to do it again. We're going to be here from 5:30 to 6:30. NBA Live Before Lock is going to follow up right after us, so long as you guys can get that like number to 500. You guys started to listen to me. We're at a 20% ratio now. 200 likes to 1,000 concurrent viewers. 500 might get tough because maybe we don't have the same numbers as we do on a normal day, but I trust that you guys can get this done. So then NBA Live Before Lock will go from 6:30 to 7:30, and then that show stops, and we immediately get into NFL Live Before Lock. That'll take you all the way up until kickoff for the NFL. So we're doing 3 hours of live shows to close out today. Not so bad. No playback tonight. We are on there right now, but we won't be there watching games or anything. They all do start at 8 o'clock, so it would kind of be a fun day. But that's not happening today because of the NFL. So make sure you're watching everything we've got. And that's why you should subscribe to the channel. You don't want to miss any of the shows getting started. So, Bulls. We got news earlier today. No Zach LaVine once again. I really assumed he was going to play. Went through shoot around yesterday. Was questionable. I was like, okay, they sat him out the front end, and now he'll come back today. Au contraire. So we're running back everything we saw yesterday. Which is a little complicated. 35% ownership coming into Io DeSumo on DraftKings. Pretty sizable price increase from yesterday, but still looks great. He's also 30% owned on FanDuel. 30% ownership coming into Dalen Terry on DraftKings, 15 on FanDuel. Terry played 24 minutes yesterday, 3,200 small forward only. And then the third most owned guy here is Jalen Smith, backup center to Nikola Vucevic, 3,600 center only. He's 25% owned. The other guys that always play that are part of this starting lineup, Patrick Williams, Josh Giddey, Kobe White, Nikola Vucevic, they're all like 10 to 15% owned. It's a little different on FanDuel, a little bit more increased ownership. No love at all going to Jalen Smith, but I get the DeSumo piece. But Dalen Terry, Jalen Smith ownership. Just talk to me about whatever you want.
So got a lot of Dalen Terry and Jalen Smith with Andre Jackson in the top RY lineups on the Stokastic sim. So that kind of spooks me a little bit because I wouldn't have thought all three guys would be the move. But I do think for the sim ROIs, I could see why that would be the highest because we're allowed to jam in more of the players. These guys all project fairly well. That said, Terry, I just don't see it with Terry. He's at 0.67 fantasy points per minute today. I'd have him at 0.65. Like Jalen Smith, at least he's like a great producer per minute. He's put up really good games and, 10 to 15 minutes of playing time. Today projected for 15 minutes. I can get there. Terry at the wing with like White and Giddey and Vooch soaking up a lot of usage and Patrick Williams still taking some. I'm not there as much. Even Taylor Horton Tucker is getting some into the rotation. So less into Terry. I get why he works as a function of the slate. But I'd take Jalen Smith over him by a pretty decent margin, I think, even with the center eligibility. There's not centers you really need on the slate anyway.
Well, Dalen Terry is at this moment my most exposed player. As I mentioned before in the Minnesota section, that is not me advocating for this. This is simply just what is happening. I gave him 20 minutes. I have him for 16 fantasy points, but 3,200 at small forward, it's a tough spot to fill. And if you're trying to get to a pay up like Giannis, then Dalen Terry becomes more important. If Giannis gets ruled out, I would expect the Dalen Terry ownership to go down because his value is less valuable to you if you're not trying to get to someone like Giannis. We don't have the only other guy that you're going to be paying up for with any sort of real salary is going to be Victor Wembanyama at that point. So I'm hoping that just happens, and I kind of hope Giannis just is ruled out so I don't have to play as much Dalen Terry. Or I'm going to take a deeper look at some of this, but 16 fantasy points. It's pretty low already. I have about 29% of Jalen Smith. That's another one that scares me a little bit, but at the same time, at least the path to his upside is clear. Like, one, he could just play well and be a good point per dollar player, or two, anything that happens to Vooch to negatively impact him, any sort of foul trouble or anything like that. And every minute that Vooch doesn't play in a normal rotation is highly likely to go directly to Jalen Smith.
They're not a blowout because yesterday he did not play the blowout.
No, not a blowout. That'll probably be a Sonogo, I'm guessing.
You forgot they had I didn't realize they had like Duarte. Like their bench has like some guys that are names and they were all just out there and they're not in the rotation at all. But yeah, I was surprised to see Jalen Smith. Just he played his normal stint. Vooch never came back in. Jalen Smith was just done at the day.
Yeah, and foul trouble will be tough here for Vooch. Not a foul trouble guy. Always like a 70th or higher percentile foul rate dude. So not the most likely scenario, but go ahead.
Yeah, for Jalen Terry, the one thing I think, and again, just a little bit of difference in projection and what it matters. Like I have Jalen Terry at 14.3, Stokastic has him at 16, and I do think the difference between 14.3 and 16 is enough to get Jalen Terry a lot or to get him 13% as I did. So I do have a follow-up question for you though. Like, do you know how much Terry you're getting with Jackson and with, Smith or one more value, or are you only getting Terry as your value because he's like the lesser owned value?
Let me take a look. And before chat lights you up for it, the first name you're looking for is Dalen Terry, not Jalen Terry.
Dalen? Sorry.
You are blending those two.
I'm blending the two together. I know it's Dalen, but yes. Dalen is a stupid name for the record too, but yeah, Jalen and Dalen.
I have 50% of Andre Jackson. Nobody else really in the extra special low salary bottom area. Jalen Smith, but we talked about that.
Because in the sim, I was getting like 95% Andre Jackson, and this is with Stokastic's data. I was getting 98% Andre Jackson, then like 50% of Terry and 50% of Jalen Smith as well. So like to me, and the top ROI lineups were all three of them. So I presume it was a good amount of Jackson with another value, Jackson sometimes with two values. But it does seem like really like a value heavy kind of build is what I was getting with the ROI lineups, top ROI lineups.
Yeah, FanDuel side's different. You're not really going to Jalen Smith. Dasunu was at 5,500 and 30% owned. That's the highest owned guy of anybody on Chicago on the FanDuel side. Vooch is at like 15. Kobe White's at like 15. Patrick Williams is at like 15. Dalen Terry is at like 15. They're all pretty similar on the FanDuel side. I think Dasunu is probably the best guy to get to there, but I don't have like a giant stand on anybody. I think Vooch might be like a hair under owned, but center on FanDuel could be a little bit different given some of the pay up options and only one center. Anything else for Chicago? Do you want to mess around with Taylor Horton Tucker, Buzelis, Julian Phillips, any of these other idiots?
Yeah, Horton Tucker at 15.6 minutes didn't do a lot for me. I do think production wise, he could be sort of a natural lever against Dalen Terry, but not enough of a projection for me to want to go there. Got a lot of Dasunmu. Dasunmu, it's weird because like I assume these prices were done before yesterday, and he was 4,400 yesterday. Now he's up to 5,300. And we didn't know that Levine was going to be out today necessarily. So Dasunmu, the price tag with it still coming up, got a lot of him. Actually got 61% Dasunmu compared to 35% for the field. So that's a relatively big stand. Everybody
Yeah.
else I'm holding hands with. Vooch I like, but didn't go crazy on him. But Dasunmu, I feel like Dasunmu should have been good yesterday. I don't know why he wasn't, but it seems like his games might be a little bit evasive, and maybe ownership gets suppressed a little bit for the fact he did kind of bust his late swap chalk for the sharper players trying to do that.
Yeah. Somebody asked about Buzelis. I actually did get to 7% of him. I only have him projected for 15 minutes. He's not going to be a great per minute dude. But he's the flat 3K MPE, small forward, power forward. Don't read too much into his minutes. Last time out, he finished the final 7 minutes and 23 seconds with Javon Carter, Chris Duarte, Julian Phillips, Taylor Horton Tucker, and himself. That is blowout run, but in theory, could play a little bit more. I mean, he is their rookie. If they want to shave a couple extra minutes, if they don't want to give Torrey Craig 3 minutes in the second quarter, that could potentially be Buzelis and get him a couple extra minutes. He's a wild card today. Nobody that I would want to build around or have a bunch of, but he's the one like non-owned Chicago Bull that I am getting to a little bit. All right, we move it on. Utah we go. Well, technically we're going to Milwaukee, but Utah has to show up there too. 8.5-point dogs in Milwaukee, 230.5 total. This is the highest total on today's slate. And we got word earlier today, which made life at least a little bit easier for analysis. Jordan Clarkson, probable, and Lauri Markkanen, probable. So everybody other than people who exploded their leg are available today for Utah. Not a lot of ownership, though. 20% coming into Keontae George on DK, 15 on FanDuel. Walker Kessler and Jordan Clarkson are both around 15. And then Lauri Markkanen is around 15 on FanDuel. Everybody else is in single digits. I don't find them to be particularly interesting, although I do have a little bit of these guys. They're the second least owned team of the six. I have one stand and one like field type dude. Do you like anything from Utah?
I'm getting a lot of Utah. I'm getting a lot of Walker Kessler in particular. I've been a little bit high on him lately, so it could just be my projections not fully there yet because I do adjust some things for the new year that sometimes take a little bit to kind of catch up in the right way. But Kessler, I think looks okay if you're projecting him for 33 fantasy points. 28 comes up a little bit less. 12% ownership by Stokastic. I've got him at about 50% because of that projection difference. So on a slate where there's not really good center play and Gobert doesn't project that well, I do like Kessler a little bit more. I have been biased towards Kessler, but he is a 1.2 fantasy point per minute guy this year. So basically what I have him at today. I have Keontae George with the field. I'm okay with that. I don't love him with Markkanen coming back into the lineup. I feel with Keontae George, basically, like we saw him have the upside. And we talked about this on the show a couple times where it's like he is shooting so poorly, but the usage is so high, the assist rate's so high. He's dominating the ball. At some point, it has to click. Last time it clicked, he put up 50 fantasy points. Now people are going to chase that one, and it's entirely possible to go back to him shooting poorly again. So I'm okay with him, but I do think like feels a little bit chasey to go there today. Got a little bit of Markkanen. My biggest stand, I guess, besides the Kessler thing, is I'm getting 5x the field of John Collins, just producing at a really good clip on the year. The minutes are not good. 22 minutes right now with Markkanen coming back in, but he's been producing like a 28% usage, 17% rebound rate, 25% assist rate, producing like a different player, and it's been reliable in every game. There hasn't been really ebbs and flows with it. So I'm intrigued by Collins here as a low on piece just because he projects well, and even well is like a 5x value. But besides that here, Kessler's a big stand. I think Collins is worth your time. And Markkanen, playing a little bit of him, I think is okay. But this is kind of my team, I think, to grab low-owned tournament stuff around chalkier lineups is kind of the sense I got from my build. So I did do that a little bit more than it seems.
So I have 44% of Kessler.
Okay.
So that's happening. 6,100 center only over a fantasy point per minute. Could look even better if, Giannis ends up out. I got to 29% of Keontae George. So a little north of the field, but like in that ballpark. 2 shares of Jordan Clarkson, 1 share of Colin Sexton, 1 share of Cody Williams, nothing else for the Utah Jazz. So this is a two-person team for me today.
It's gonna be tough when John Collins hangs 50 on you then.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to do that in 22 minutes as the backup center.
I should point out too, and I don't know if you have any thoughts on this guy, but Cody Williams, if you don't play any of the value, Cody Williams kind of becomes the sim value guy who comes up a little bit, and he is projected for 26 minutes today. So I think Cody Williams is not a good play, but on a slate where there's very obvious projectable value, I do think he comes up a little bit more. So I'm going to flag that because I do think that's one thing here where the sim is accounting for the projections are the current median outcome. For Cody Williams, he's not in that, but if all these guys bust, he's probably the next best value, I think, even though he's not good.
36% true shooting for Cody Williams on the season so far.
Due for positive regression. I think we would agree.
Ooh, I don't know. He might just be legitimately bad, but is a value at 3,900 at small forward. That is a thing. The Collins piece, I just don't think I could get to with Markkanen back now. My assumption is that he just kind of plays whatever lineup or whatever minutes Walker Kessler doesn't play. And his price is juiced now from getting a couple extra minutes with Markkanen having been out for the past 3 games. So that one scares me a little bit.
No,
if we see him play at the 4 a little bit, that could be that could change it up a little.
I mean, haven't they played a little bit more staggered? Like he hasn't been just a direct backup this year, has he?
Pretty much exclusive backup when Markkanen's around.
Oh, when Markkanen's around, but he's been playing. Okay, so he'll play some 4 alongside other 5s, but otherwise he's behind Markkanen directly.
So I'll just give you the number right now. They've played 43 minutes together, and Lauri Markkanen was only on the floor for 2 of those minutes. If I put it in games where Lauri Markkanen played, which is obviously a limited amount of games, they have played 7 minutes together in the 4 games that Markkanen has played.
Okay. Yeah, honestly, some of that, now I'm looking at it a little more closely. He was basically like direct backup for Filipowski and kind of came at his minutes. So I mean, I'm still getting him with the 21-minute projection, but it is like he's been playing his mind out. So I think that's sort of the caveat is like Collins has been playing so well this year that 21 minutes of him playing like this year is going to look better, whereas 21 minutes of him a little bit longer, less good. So.
Yeah. I mean, what they need to do, the reason he looks better this year is because they're playing him at the proper position. When you have him and Walker Kessler playing alongside of each other, it takes a bite out of anything you would actually want John Collins to be doing. He kind of needs to be out there as like a stretch 5 in some way. And I think that really improves what he is able to get done because his rates are pretty dramatically different. He's taking 3.5 more 2s per 100 possessions so far this season and compared to what you would expect. And I think so much of that is just simply he's closer to the basket now. So he inevitably gets more shots that are easier to convert. The other piece for him, his model projection from EPM and Darko is like 3.5 assists per 100 possessions. He's at 5.7 so far this year, 66% higher than my baseline. So I'm interested to see, are they running more things through him? Is that just like a weird quirk through the beginning of the season? Because if he's picking up assists at that sort of rate, that's a really nice bump for someone like John Collins.
From what I've seen from him, it's a little more DHO stuff that's converting into baskets. So like he's getting kind of easier assists, at least the ones that I've seen, but I haven't dug in enough on it. I just know that I agree his rates are high. I didn't project for 3.9 assists today. And like I mentioned, his rate has been about 25.4% on the year. So he's been playing differently is all I could say so far. If that all falls apart, I don't know. On a short slate, I'll take my shot at him, but I agree. Like, please be measured about it because my projection's just off on Stokastic and he's that much lower, like ownership wise. So tournament play if you want to follow old Spags and die on the hill that I'm going to die on a little bit tonight.
And we got to remember the things that we're largely talking about here. This information carries over. I'm giving out ownership to FanDuel. It's not like I think John Collins plays one way on DraftKings and differently at 6,600 on FanDuel. These takes are largely the same. I will point out caveats where guys are wildly disproportionately priced. Like Dame Lillard on DK is 9,500. He's 8,800 on FanDuel. He's 35% owned more. I mean, for the large majority of this, whatever the ownership says is like basically the correct way to order these guys in terms of how good they are today. What you want to do with that information after that is like whatever you want to like. You can think someone is overowned and still play them in 100% of your lineups and get positive ROI lineups. You've got to break free from like thinking that context matters all that much because it doesn't. We're through 3 teams. It's already 6-10. It's incredible how fast time moves when you do nothing about the show for the first 15 minutes.
We've been making a meal of it, of each player and each pick and each game. And also we just for about 15 minutes.
So one quick thing I want to let you guys do. There's a link in the description of this video. That link can get you a month of whichever sports sim package you're looking for. I assume if you're watching this, NBA is what you're looking for. You can click that link, sign up through one of our affiliates, and get a month plus whatever that affiliate is offering you. So if you're in a legal sports betting state and you haven't signed up at all the sports books yet, there are a couple different offers for the sports books where you can sign up, get bonus bets or cash or whatever the bonus could be for individual sites. You can take advantage of those and get a month of Sims. Maybe you're not in a legal sports betting state or that's not your cup of tea, but you like the pick'em sites like Prize Picks and Underdog and Sleeper and Better. Those deals also are there for those sites too, with some sort of deposit bonus. So whatever you're looking for in either one of those realms, if you haven't signed up at those sites yet, there's no cost to you other than your initial deposit. You don't lose out. You get a bonus by getting in there and a month of our Sims. So it's an incredible deal. The link is in the description. You just click it. You'll show up on a page and all of the deals and the instructions of what you need to do are just listed in front of you with a button that you can click on to claim that offer. Very simple. Ooh, I pulled up the stream. I'm liking it for myself now, up to 298. So the Milwaukee side. For right now, we're going to speak about this, assuming Giannis is playing. We can talk a little bit about what this looks like if he ends up out afterwards. Right now, he's the chalk play of the day, the overwhelming highest owned dude, in and around 70% across both sites, 11-1 on DraftKings, 11-5 on FanDuel. Utah might have the worst defense in the league. Giannis is Giannis. I love him today. I actually have a little bit less now than I had earlier. He's in 53% of my stuff, so technically under the field, but there's no one on his level today. Like, you can say that Wemby is, but he doesn't project like that.
Yeah, I think the alternative is just like not paying up. But even then, there aren't really options that look fantastic if you take Giannis out right now. So I agree. He's like the best play in the slate. I actually have him a little bit lower projected than Stokastic. I'm at 59.6 compared to 61.7. Despite that, still got him at 68% of lineup. So even with a little bit of projection drop, it still looks good. And again, despite me being lower on him, I have him at 1.76 fantasy points per minute today. So he looks great overall. Milwaukee desperately needs wins. Utah is soft in every possible category. They're weak in shooting defense, weak in rebounding, weak in points per game, weak in pace, like just everything they're giving up. So rebounding especially, like they've been really bad at. So I think for them, they're just giving up everything. Milwaukee should win this one. And even if they don't, or like they're going to be in this one for 4 quarters. So Giannis is the best play, assuming he goes. And it's probably not even close. And if you wanted to fade him for a tournament, I would get it. But like sim-wise, I'll tell you, the sim does not want you to fade Giannis at all.
No, he looks absolutely fantastic. Clearly my overwhelming highest optimal. He just looks great. 20% ownership to Andre Jackson right now. For those that don't know, Andre Jackson has been named the starter in place of Gary Trent today. 20% ownership coming into Brook Lopez, and then 12 to Dame. But as I mentioned before, Dame is $700 cheaper on FanDuel, and he's close to 40% owned there. Similar ownership for Brook Lopez on both sites. Similar ownership for Andre Jackson on both sites. No love to Prince. No love to Portis. No love to Trent, Connaughton, DeLon Wright. None of those guys are getting any sort of real love. So let's go to the other star. How are you managing Dame? Because as of right now on DK, I'm 2Xing.
So I'm almost 2Xing him. I got 23% compared to 12.4% projected ownership right now. So I'm okay with that. Obviously, we'll know Giannis' situation before lock. So I'm barring something really weird. So we won't be able to kind of get over the field on Dame as an advantage thing if, with the questionable status of Giannis or anything. But I still think he's worth the play regardless. Again, they need these wins at this point. Dame and Giannis together have been playing like upwards of high 30s minutes in games because they just need to get the win so bad. So for Lillard at this point, he would obviously look infinitely better if Giannis were out. But for right now, he's playable. And I think playable, like Josh said, about 2x the field.
I fully expect Gary Trent to make 10 threes off the bench today just because. Not somebody I'm getting to, though. But yeah, I like the idea of getting the Dame. Clearly a much better play on FanDuel, but I like the idea that I can get a little bit over the field for him. Lopez is just what he always is. Like, his price is normal. It's a 3-game slate. You kind of got to get there a little bit. He doesn't look great. He doesn't look bad. He just looks like he should be 20% owned.
Yeah, he's playable. Portis not playable if Giannis is in. I think Portis is like
No.
priced up for Giannis being out again, and he projects awfully. I don't think he's even a tournament play.
Yeah, I have 2 shares of Bobby Portis, which is, that could be 0, that could be 1, that could be 3, like just filler if it pops up and happens to work out. But I have absolutely no interest in Bobby Portis if Giannis is playing. And then let's talk Andre Jackson. Starting 3,500 on DK, 3,900 on FanDuel. Now he's only shooting guard eligible on FanDuel, but he is point guard small forward on DraftKings, which is pretty appealing. I have 53%. Last I saw it, we had 22% projected ownership. I wouldn't be surprised if that creeps up a little bit as we get closer and closer to lock, as more and more people understand that Andre Jackson is starting in place of Gary Trent. So that's really awesome value, especially if Giannis is in and you're trying to play Giannis. Like those guys are going to be paired up quite a bit because of that salary savings. The position is perfect. The only real downside to Andre Jackson is that he's not a good per minute guy.
Yeah, I mean, he looks interesting out there. Like I saw him on the court and was like, I haven't seen Andre Jackson playing this year, and was like, who's that out there? Because he's moving around and he kind of has
He's active.
length. Yeah, it's like big crazy hair too, so he kind of catches your eye. But like he looked like one of the better bucks on the floor the other night when Giannis is out there. So I get it. The issue though, and I think it's something that stuck with me from it might have been like the first year I was doing Stokastic content. There was a Kelly Oubre slate where Kelly Oubre was a chalk and he came in with the Wizards as a starter there when everybody else when it wasn't everybody else out. It was like one guy was out. Oubre started. And you saw the usage fall off a cliff for Oubre because of the fact he was at that point a young player. Nobody really knew what he was going to do in that spot. And in reality, he just lost usage to Beal or Wall, whoever was out there. Kind of what I worry about with Jackson. Not that he's like a usage player, but moves into this first unit, probably going to be a little bit less productive in some of the shooting stuff. Maybe adds a little more peripherally where he's been rebounding an okay clip, assisting at an okay clip. But I worry if he's like super chalk. And for the record, it got him in 62% of lineups. But with the Sims, I do think he gets closer to 30, 40 on a short slate with a lot of sharp players who really love NBA on a Thursday. Could be 50. I think wouldn't be crazy ownership wise. And if that were the case, that's where Jackson, I think, is not a good play. So kind of dual prong concerns for me. But did we get news?
He's in.
Oh, okay. All right. So Jackson definitely won't be super chalk as much as he would have been if Giannis were out. But yeah, Giannis being in, still think he gets owned a lot. Still think Jackson gets more than 22% if I had to guess.
I would expect it to climb a little bit too. Yeah, just in case you're curious, that is the news that Giannis Antetokounmpo is in for today. So we can move forward there. Yeah, I mean, look, Andre Jackson is a complete and utter zero offensively. He does not have that skill set right now, but really, really good rebounder. You could expect him to get a bunch there, which is actually would have been really interesting if Giannis was out, because Brook Lopez is like the greatest team rebounder in basketball history. Like all he wants to do is box somebody out so that or box 3 people out because he's huge and make sure someone on his team gets it. That's a really big benefit when you're playing alongside of him. A little bit less so once Giannis is out there. But his other major thing is very active for the stocks. A guy that is going to be hunting steals and blocks, and that is really what you're looking for. You get that outlier day from him there, a couple weird shots fall for him. That's how he starts paying off that salary. If he gets like 1 steal, he's going to have a tough time because he just does not have that offensive skill set.
Also, just going to talk about Andre Jackson, and I wanted to bring up the chat before from SMP. He said that Cody Williams, as a pivot to Andre Jackson, if you are worried about the ownership, Cody Williams had 62% true shooting his freshman year at Colorado. So Cody Williams, maybe not as bad as it seems. And if Andre Jackson doesn't get usage, I don't know. Cody Williams is growing in appeal to me the more we talk about Andre Jackson.
If we could roster Cody Williams playing against other college basketball players, I think we'd be in pretty good shape today.
The shooting is the same. Sure, guys will defend him a little bit more, but they're not going to defend Cody Williams. He had some shots.
For the record, I do agree that like that is an interesting pivot to make between the two. They're both equally like not great per minute dudes. The downside to Cody Williams is that he doesn't have guard forward eligibility in the same way as Andre Jackson, but like those guys are not like they're not all that dissimilar from a projection standpoint.
Yeah, I just know I couldn't get away from Andre Jackson. And then when I can't get away from somebody, I was listening to one of the podcasts out there talking about battle royales today for Underdog. And it's like, you can't get away from somebody, neither can anybody else. They're uncomfortable. Just be uncomfortable with it. So that's what I say for Andre. He looks really good, but just watch that ownership because I think it's closer to 40.
Gary Trent might have been a sniper off the bench, but Gary Trent is shooting 23% from three so far this season with a crisp 45% true shooting. So they need him to start being a sniper. Otherwise, it'll be very clear why no one in the league signed him and he signed a minimum deal in Milwaukee.
But Josh, dare I say, due for positive regression?
Yeah, it's either that or he's due for a different career.
Due for China.
Because if you stop doing the one thing that you're good at, it's going to get pretty dicey. So now that we know that Giannis is in, we do not have to play out the other side of this coin and talk about Bobby Portis and some of the other guys that might be grabbing minutes. We could just throw that one in the old garbage. So now that we know he's in, what are you doing with someone like Taurean Prince, who starts and plays, but is somehow even worse than Andre Jackson on a per minute basis? I mean, Taurean Prince is just a 29-minute Cody Williams.
Yeah, and he's higher priced too, and you don't get the guard part of it. You just get small forward, power forward, which still helps. I didn't get Prince at all. Got him at 1%, so basically the same amount of Bobby Portis I got, which is just kind of flotsam for the roster. And granted, I do reflect the current year's rates. So he's been under 10% in usage, under 10% in rebounds, under 10% in assists. He's just adding nothing when he's on the court. So can that flip in one game? Sure, but honestly, with guys like AJ Green out there, and like AJ Green shot the lights out the other day. Like, I don't know where Prince is going to start shooting more. Like, there's guys that are fun that they could probably get some usage out of on a team that desperately needs to get things going. And Prince, like, what does him shooting more do for the teams? I don't think it changes for him, really. I don't want to be there.
No. I referenced this on the strategy show this morning. Of everybody in the league that's in my model, like 500 and something people, Taurean Prince is the 8th worst per possession fantasy player of anybody that exists. PJ Tucker, Gabe Vincent, Gary Harris, Cam Reddish, Johnny Davis, Amir Coffey, Julian Phillips, Taurean Prince. Illustrious company.
But, a couple of them have had good games recently. Reddish yesterday, yeah.
Well, you can fall into it every once in a while, but on a per minute basis, next level awful. All right, we close it out. Game 3. But they all start at the same time. Portland, 4-point dogs in San Antonio, 217 total. Not a ton of ownership coming into the Portland side. Around 15% on both sites for Jeremy Grant. Call it 20 to 25 on Ayton. Around 10 for Tumani Kamara. And then it's a bit different on FanDuel. Simons is basically unowned on DraftKings. He's close to 30 on FanDuel. Denny Avdi and Scoot are both basically unowned on DraftKings. They are 18 and 10 respectively. And we are still waiting on the piece of news. Shaedon Sharpe may be making his Portland debut today. He is questionable coming back. He tore his left labrum sometime during the preseason. So him being back will definitely complicate Portland a little bit in that it's just going to remove a chunk of minutes for sure. Do you like anything from Portland?
So I do like Ayton and Grant as guys that you get to that I think make some lineups work a little bit more unique. Both guys projected under 20% owned, 17% for Ayton is the current projection on ownership. Jeremy Grant, 15%. I got to 20 and 17% for those guys, which isn't crazy, but it is something that's like, it did come up in some of the lineups I thought were really interesting because they had good players around it, but had a lower ownership product. So I like Ayton and Grant relative to as much as you can like guys that don't project for even a 5x value on this slate. Besides that, Simons just not that good this year. Feels like he's giving the most out of this offense with guys like Scoot behind him. Technically Sharp coming in should hurt him a little bit. He's been deferring his usage the most, but I do know, Simons somewhere in there has the theoretical ceiling. Don't think it can happen with all these guys healthy and in the roster. But I wouldn't mind Simons. I just didn't get there. But Ayton and Grant are really it for me on here. 5% Kamara, under 1% Avdia. Nothing else stands out. These guys are like appropriately priced for players that are better than them, let alone them themselves.
I'm right at the field for Jeremy Grant. I'm right at the field for DeAndre Ayton. I don't have much Kamara. And then I 2x Danfernee Simons. He's 6% owned and I got 13. So like perfect GPP play in a matchup against San Antonio, but I don't see anything on Portland that makes me want to go crazy. I'm not going to be getting, Sharp ends up out, probably makes you feel like a hair better about Denny and Scoot. I don't want any part of like Chris Murray or Donovan Clingan or who else has been getting minutes? Delano Banton.
And it's like he got that run in the fourth quarter out of desperation.
He played 12 minutes in the fourth quarter and didn't play the rest of the game. He's I can't imagine why you would roster him today, especially if Shaden Sharp is back.
Ban should be on a team playing somewhere just for fantasy, if nothing else.
Yeah. So I gave him 10 minutes. He is full stop, unrosterable to me. You have to assume that he is going to be getting a rotation that has not happened.
Yeah. Stokastic has 5
Radam.
minutes too, so even lower.
Okay. Radam with the super chat. He said, "Hey guys, I was wondering, Bulls have the fastest pace so far this year. I was wondering if faster pace equals more rebounds for the opposing team. Is this a spot for a 15 rebound Cat game?" Well, I am going to assume the Cat gets 0 rebounds because he doesn't play today.
Yeah.
He's also not on Minnesota anymore. He got traded to the New York Knicks. So I'm going to go with no.
Got to be nice to people that were just unfrozen. The unfrozen caveman lawyer. Unfortunately, no, not a good play. But I appreciate the super chat.
I mean, like in theory, yes, the more possessions means the more every stat that exists. But what you're looking for to increase your rebounds are missed shots, which again, if the pace goes up, there are more shots taken. But in situations where you're looking to grab someone that on like a potential, oh God, I wonder if this guy can get a bunch more rebounds, I'd be looking at how good of a rebounding team, how good of a defense, or how good of an offensive rebounding team is the opponent, and how bad are they at shooting? If this is a team that's going to get up a lot of shots and they're not a particularly good offensive rebounding team, then you could see a boatload of potential rebounding opportunities. But when we're talking about pace here, like the difference between the fastest teams and the slowest teams is like 6 possessions. So we're talking about like an extra rebound at best.
I appreciate you going at that level of depth for somebody that couldn't even look up the current rest of the team to determine that a player was no longer available. That was a great answer.
Yeah. I felt bad, but yeah, he got traded crazily to New York. Has played a bunch too. Close it out. San Antonio Spurs. Obviously, no Jeremy Sohan in this one. He's gonna be done for a minute. Devin Vassell allegedly coming back this weekend. They could use him because it's probably good to get your only other good player. Sorry to like Chris Paul and Julian Champagny, but like, you know what I mean. Anyway, lots of ownership coming into San Antonio. Second most owned team on DK. They're also over 200 ownership on FanDuel. 30 to Wemby on both sites. 35 to Champagny on both sites. 20 to 30 for Barnes. 40 for Paul on DK and 57 for him on FanDuel. 15 for Keldon Johnson on DK, 30 on FanDuel, 30 for Castle on both sites. Minimal to Branham, Collins, Mamukelishvili, and Blake Wesley. I'm just throwing it to you. What do you like from San Antonio? Because there's a lot of guys.
So like, I don't really like anything here. I got a lot of it, but I do think that these are plays to me that are some of the less fun, even for a slate like this one, which is not chock full of fun plays. But Keldon Johnson would project the best for me. I got the most of him relative to the field, got 29% of him. Getting less in the field of Chris Paul. Honestly, an okay projection on him, but just not a player that I think works as well for lineups today. So I got him in 27% of lineups compared to 38% projected ownership. For Wemby, flat with the field, 30 and 30. So I'm happy about that. Getting a good amount of Giannis, getting a good amount of Wemby for the slate. I'm low on Champagny. Just I don't really know why. I think I have a few better guys projected in terms of the wing players. But he's projected for 39% ownership almost. I'm at 13. So 1/3 on him. Low on Barnes too. Barnes might be making your list of least productive players soon. He's at 0.58 fantasy points per minute on the year. It's not looking like there's underlying rates. He's actually shooting the lights out right now. 63% true shooting on the year, but he's not been good. Don't really want to go there. Castle, I'm okay with the field on him, but this to me is like match ownership besides Keldon Johnson, who I think is a little bit better played than the field.
Evidently, he meant Gobert, but everything I explained is still the same situation. Harrison Barnes, 33rd worst per 100 possession player. I got a chunk of these dudes. Depends on who we're talking about. Actually, a little bit over the field on Wemby right now. I have 42%. Works for me. I have 40
about Tim Duncan.
Yeah, that somebody was like, I think Cat can get a power play goal tonight.
Chat's doing a good job. I got to give the kudos to the chat. They made me laugh a few times today.
Look, if we're all making jokes, it's great. If we're being rude, that's not. Jokes are great. Cat getting a power play goal, that's a funny joke for this situation. But if it's just like, hey, you stupid idiot, we don't need that either. Neutral to the field on Champagny, neutral to the field on the Barnacle of the Bay. A little bit lighter on Castle, but still in 20% of my stuff. I basically don't have Chris Paul.
Yeah, he's not been bad this year. He's just not shooting the ball as much. He's got 64% true shooting, usage under 20% though. Court time without Sohan, he gets a little bit more assists, a little bit more usage, but the lack of assists, I think, drive him down a little bit more for me. So I don't know, he's not a bad play, but I don't want to play him at 40% with his salary, like what, 1,500 higher than it was earlier in the week, 1,000
Yeah,
at least.
I mean, 6,900 is a really big price tag for Chris Paul. I like, it's not that he doesn't look good. I have him at 21% optimal, but I mean, you need like a really specific game out of him. I mean, I know Portland sucks, so like that is definitely an appeal, but it's a little scary to, and particularly on a back-to-back. Like, they can step on his minutes today, and that would not be in any way surprising. This is a 39-year-old Chris Paul on a back-to-back today. So like, if he plays 28 minutes, they're just like, okay, we're going to trim a little bit on these first couple rotations. Like, that's enough to make 38% be one of the more negative ROI plays that you'll get to if he ends up playing a bit less because of this back-to-back, and we don't expect it. Anything else that we should be talking about here on the San Antonio side?
No, I mean, look, I think you're getting at a lot of these guys. I think just taking them where they come seems like the move for them because there really isn't strong leans here. The only one I'm like on is Barnes because like he's been playing well and he's still not doing it. So I would try to avoid Barnes personally, but that's me.
Yeah. I'm going to take a look at the Chris Paul. I'm going to assume I at least have him at least a little bit under market consensus. So I'm going to see if I could tweak him, but I don't mind not having him. That's something where like if he beats me tonight, kudos. I am nervous. I do think he has a little bit more downside risk than just immediately shows up when you look at him. 3 up, 3 down. Tell the people where to find you.
Follow me at Chris Spags if you can. And of course, I do a stream right before this one every day at Splash Play NBA. I look at Stokastic Sims, look at some betting market stuff. So trying to build that up if you can. Show some love, subscribe to at Splash Play NBA. And of course, hit the like button on this video too, because we did some work today. We filled an hour effortlessly at that.
You know me and Spags. We fill it up better than anybody else on the planet. Good luck, everybody. Stay right here. Live Before Lock is coming up next. Hit that like button while we leave. Give those guys a little something, something for when they get in the door.
No, they're not. No, they're not. No, Todd, not now. I asked for salmon 3 times. It's fine, whatever. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to NBA Live Before Lock, presented by Stokastic. I'm Eric Lindquist. You can follow me at Eric Lindquist. That's C-E-R-I-C for correct. You can find that over on X. It's great. I've been joined by my friend, Fantasy Tips Matt. His name is Matt Belman. He's in Ohio. He's having a great time here. You're not a Bengals fan, are you?
Definitely not a Bengals fan.
Definitely not.
Cincy and Cleveland. Cincy is very southern Ohio. It's the airport's in Kentucky. If you know anything about geography, then you know.
I do. I know that. Well, I mean, I'm assuming you're a Cleveland Browns fan and Cleveland.
I am.
Guardians fan, because
I am, and we've talked about this numerous times. So,
well, we've never talked football. When have we ever done a football show?
I mean, I don't know, but I am a Browns fan, yes. Although right now it's really hard to be. I'm not a Bengals fan, but I don't hate them like I do the Steelers and Ravens.
Gotcha. Okay, so Pennsylvania, it's been the hotbed state all week long, that's for sure, and will continue to be yet again today, but obviously they're playing in Baltimore, a little bit different, heading over to Maryland to go have themselves some fun. Cleveland also didn't look so good last week with Jameis Winston. We shall see lots of NFL content coming your way this weekend, but of course this is NBA and NFL content coming tonight here for that Cincinnati and Baltimore football game that will be underway in T-minus, I don't know, like 90 minutes. So yeah, very excited for that. You're going to want to check out Live Before Lock with Greg Ehrenberg with Mr. Dave Lochran Laufey himself. So check that out for sure. But how's everything going over there, my friend?
Everything is solid. Always nice to be on here with you. Thursday night, we got a good Thursday night football game and a small, weird NBA slate. But I like these slates when all the games start at the same time. It's that typical sprint slate, and you kind of know where you're standing throughout the entire time, which is fun.
Yeah, they've grown on me. I used to hate them before The Sims. Now that The Sims exist, I can at least, because before it was just like lineup order and trying to make sure you had the. And
you love late swap too, so I can see why you don't like them as much.
I'm a big late swap whore. You can clip that, Jordan Klein. I don't really give a shit. But anyway, I'm definitely all about that late swap, And because it doesn't exist on a game or a slate where it's all going to be cutting off here, and obviously we're going to be done half an hour before the slate actually locks. So you're going to need to keep apprised of news. If you're in the Discord, I'll be hanging out there for a half hour as I'm working on my next day NBA stuff. Tons of games coming our way tomorrow and Live Before Lock again. But yeah, I think we got all the big news that we were kind of waiting for the most part. Zach LaVine going to be out here for tonight. That is a massive deal and something that will affect our lineups here on their back-to-back. And then, of course, the big Giannis Antetokounmpo going to be playing basketball against Utah. Everybody from Utah ended up in, which was a little bit surprising to me. Clarkson and Lauri Markkanen, both probable. And yeah, all of those things are going to matter big time in how we build out our lineups. We're going to be sharing the Sims. We've got Jordan Klein here behind the virtual glass, the best producer in the game named Jordan Klein. He will be doing our bidding as we work through this slate here. But anything that really stands out to you that you want to address here before we dive in?
Just happy we got the Giannis news because that changes the entire slate. I mean, he's the highest owned, highest projected player if in, and if he's out, it changes just everything. So, you know, slates like this, probably less skill involved, but just easier to manage. So every now and then I appreciate slates like this where you can just, once lock hits, you can just enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean, let's start with Milwaukee, actually, because Giannis, he's your highest owned player, but I think, sorry, Miss Jackson, he's going to be starting here tonight. Andre Jackson, he's the second highest owned player now on the slate because we're getting a $3,500 piece that's stepping into this role. And again, all of these games are starting at the same time. So we're playing this one pretty straight up, as Teddy KGB would say, but not to throw in too many movie references throughout the entire show, but that's kind of what I do. Andre Jackson is definitely an interesting piece of chalk. We've got him around 45% ownership, and we've got his optimal percentage north of that, 55% ownership. I know you're somebody who generally plays a few lineups. I'm playing 20 max tonight because I'm really focusing on NFL. I think it's an awesome NFL slate for sure. And NBA, obviously, it's great too. But yes, late swap, a huge part of my process. And well, we got all this news really early with 50 minutes. I'm going to let The Sims do its thing, but I'm curious, if you're building out one lineup tonight, how do you handle Milwaukee with these two chalky pieces? Do you play them both? Do you play one of the two? Is there somebody you're prioritizing, or can you fade both in this spot?
Man, really, really tough to fade both. Giannis, man, really hard to get away from here just because raw points matters so much on a slate like this. And I almost feel like the only way he doesn't quite get there is if Milwaukee just steamrolls them. But in that situation, like Giannis is going to have to do a large part of them steamrolling them. So just very few situations where I don't see Giannis being really good here. He's, I think, even at his price tag, just because we have the value, maybe the toughest fade on the slate.
I agree. I find it impossible to get away from Giannis. We're talking about a guy who's projected for over 61 fantasy points. And I think also, not to bring record into this, but
they need wins.
We have a 1-6 Utah team playing a 1-6 Milwaukee team. You're telling me that, you know, former finals MVP, former MVP Giannis Antetokounmpo, one of the top 5 players in the league, isn't going to, pull the Jordan, and I took that personally a little bit, where it's like, yo, how do you possibly fade Giannis on a short slate, a 3-game slate, where he's projected for 15 more fantasy points, has power forward center eligibility, 15 more fantasy points than Anthony Edwards, nearly 7.5 fantasy points more than Victor Wembanyama on a back-to-back himself. Just kind of feels like a no-brainer, and obviously if he tweaks his ankle or doesn't look right, or there's a massive blowout, which is very, very live, there's ways that this one gets weird, but building out one lineup, there's no way I fade Giannis. I'm a little bit more inclined to say you can get away from Andre Jackson, purely because, well, we can kind of go to mid-range pieces, and it's not all that price sensitive like this slate isn't. We have Victor Wembanyama, who I think is definitely a luxury item here. We do have some ceilings in Dame Lillard if you want to try to get weird. Anthony Edwards for sure, but like for the most part, Giannis is the first player that I'm clicking into one lineup, and in 20 max, I'm probably going to be over this 70% number for sure.
If we had other studs on this slate that were like worth paying for, I think the answer could be Giannis. But like with Andre Jackson, even though he projects as such a good dollar per dollar play, it's almost like Najee Marshall yesterday. And he ended up being okay. He got you 16 drafting points. And certainly if Jackson Jr. gets you 30 here, which is within the realm, like you're going to need him. But most likely he gets like 17 to 22. And it's like, yeah, that's really good for you. And he'll probably be in the winning lineup because so many people will have him. But on the like perfect lineup at night's end, there's obviously a chance he's not in it.
Yeah, no, there's definitely a chance that he's not in it. But
Giannis is almost like, if Giannis does what he's supposed to do,
correct,
he will be in it.
That's the point. I'm 100% with you there. I mean, Milwaukee is in this mode now where they're going to try anything. And obviously Glenn Rivers, as we like to call him on this show, for the people who know, this is where you could see it change. Obviously he got the 25 minutes there. He only put up 21 though in the 25 minutes against Cleveland there on that back-to-back. Obviously was starting to have the tide turn towards him as opposed to Gary Trent. But go ahead.
Man, no, sorry, but I'm just on the same page as you. Like the other thing about this is, which I don't think enough people put into consideration, is that when he's starting, he's on the floor with Dame and Giannis. So like those guys are going to have the ball in their hands. Not that you need Jackson. Like he's never going to be the guy that's like, main usage guy for Milwaukee. But a lot of times when you see these guys step into this role, they don't necessarily do more. They might get more minutes, but I think on the other side of that, a guy like Gary Trent, you could have the opposite effect where he might be a spark in the second unit and like this change might do wonders for him. It's almost like sometimes when they drop guys in the batting order in baseball, like you see that first couple games, like they know they got to get going and they're just seeing the ball better. If Trent gets a couple shots going here, I could see him being a nice tournament piece on this slate. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think Trent's an interesting one purely because you get some of that second unit run. The big problem is that you're going to see Milwaukee stagger a little bit of Lillard and Giannis there. And I think that obviously they're still going to be the predominant ball handlers, the guys that they're playing through in terms of usage. It'll be Giannis and Lillard all day, no matter which one's on the court or if they're on the court together. But I think Gary Trent's one of those guys that, yeah, it's kind of trying to get him to figure his shit out. And what I think is going to end up happening here is that it'll just be like a hot hand approach. Like, I don't think Andre Jackson automatically just starting becomes like, oh, we've got to slide him in for the 26, 28 minutes every single night now going forward. Like, I could see a lot of worlds where AJ Green, he played 34 minutes. AJ Green played 34 minutes last game. Why aren't we talking about AJ Green in any way, shape, or form? What is his ownership here at the moment? Because, like, 7.3 projection, they're throwing anything against the wall. And, like, I truly think it's like, all right, we have Lillard, we have Giannis. We probably have to play Taurean Prince a lot just purely because of defensive purposes, even though he only played 15 minutes, had a couple of fouls early, and it is what it is there. Maybe we do see diminished minutes there. Bobby Portis off the bench, but like whomever that 2 is going to be, like whoever it ends up being, it's just going to be like a hot hand approach. You could rotate around a bunch of dudes, Pat Connaughton, AJ Green, whomever. Like, I think there's a lot of worlds where we just kind of like see that being the case here for Milwaukee going forward. And like, I find it really hard. Like, if we're going to see 50, 55% ownership, I guess we have him at 45, but like, he's 3,500. He's going to get the starting tag, or sorry. Yeah, AJ Green's up there at 4,100. That's the whole purpose of him not even like having any remote ownership. But I do think that there's some massive volatility in these minutes, and that kind of creates a fun thing on a 3-game slate that locks at the same time.
Yeah, definitely. I guess my biggest question for you is like, when you're looking at this, Andre Jackson or Jalen Terry?
What do I have currently?
Because when I'm like, just
I
kind
love
of taking
Jalen Terry on this slate. I love him. I have him in 40% of my lineups. I currently have Andre Jackson in 40% as well. So I'm not like making this massive case against. It's simply like, I know a lot of people are out there building one lineup. I'm going to do 3 max. I'm going to have single entry here as well, but primarily focusing on just 20 max and focusing on football. And like, as such, I think it's a really interesting spot to potentially like not full fade. We've got him currently with positive leverage, but if that ownership ends up being 60, 65%, I would be really kicking myself that I didn't try to get to other pieces. Like 3,900 on FanDuel, that is really, really hard to get away from, I think, right now. But on DK, I still think there's at least the chance here where we don't see those minutes the same way that it might be projected across the industry.
See, the interesting thing for me in the Sims is I'm getting to both a lot in the same lineup. Like,
and I think that that's probably like in an optimal world what you should be doing. But like, again, we're talking single entry where it could end up being 75, 80%. Like, we've seen pretty muted ownership, I would say, relative to like what you'll get in a month or two when, we start getting some sample size on some guys. We start seeing some smashes, some trends really kind of stick out for people where it's like, oh, I can't fade a whomever with this person out. Like, if something happens to Kyrie, it's like Luka will be 12-5 before you know it, and we'll all still be clicking on the button. It's like Russell Westbrook and James Harden in days of yore for the real NBA DFS diehards. You know what I mean? If you've been in the streets for 6-7 years with those two specifically. Shit, we had Russell Westbrook last night. But anywho, back to what I was getting at. I do think that there's some volatile chalk specifically with him. And that's kind of what I want to ask you here also. When we get Ayo Dosunmu, because yesterday he was 4,400, we got complete failure here on the Chicago side. But with Zach LaVine out, this was the other massive piece of news that dropped on that previous show. I'm not sure what they covered. We'll obviously be covering lots here throughout this program. Still, tons of time here, 40 minutes before we turn it over to the NFL Live before lock. But Zach LaVine out. We saw Ayo Dosunmu play 25 minutes and not nearly as well as what he did against Utah, but that's understandable against Dallas, a better defensive squad, even without PJ Washington, without Derek Lively. Only 25 minutes, shot it porously, 2 for 13 from the field. Now you go back home, but you get on a flight, you're back home here, and you got to go out there again. And Ayo Dosunmu here is up to 5,300. A little bit different today than what he was yesterday. And I'm just curious how you're looking at this Bulls squad on the back-to-back.
Yeah, I do think that they played better than last night because they just all were awful.
Correct.
But it is a tough spot. And like the prices are now have risen, especially with Ayo. If he were 4,500 again, I think he'd look like a really strong play. He's not. I think he just looks like a play here. I think that he certainly like has 40 in him. He showed it a couple of games ago, but that's not like who he's going to be on a regular basis. So he's a play. I don't mind him on this slate, but he's not a priority for me. How about you?
No, and that's kind of
all of them have had their prices risen. I didn't even realize.
Yeah, as you're building out, well, all of them did. Yeah, we'll get into the gamut of it, but I'm kind of hitting on the chalk here early, purely because now we're going to get some stabilized ownership. We've reran everything for the right pieces being in and out. We are going to officially see, I guess, Milwaukee's starting lineup. I think we know exactly what it's going to be here. It's just going to be a 1-for-1 swap, getting Gary Trent out of there and adding Andre Jackson Jr. But overall, with no Zach LaVine, I'm assuming we still get the IO starting. 5,300 though is just a completely different type of tag, and that leads me into the Dalen Terry conversation. And I think Dalen Terry is probably the most undervalued, underrepresented, underowned piece that we have on this slate. Played 24 minutes yesterday. Part of that was blowout run, but you're gonna get a 3,200 Dalen Terry out there for high teens minutes, more than likely, no matter what. He played kind of serviceably there, and he fills out small forward, which again is just going to be one of our weaker positions all year long. What do you really like at small forward? I can't think of anything that I want to prioritize outside of Jackson Jr., where, again, if I'm trying to get away from that specific piece of chalk in one lineup, in 3 max and whatever it might be, and if I'm trying to be lower on somebody to the field, I think Dalen Terry is like the awesome piece. So I'm glad you threw him in there. I currently have them in the same amount of lineups, but one is a little bit underowned relative to the other. And I think it could be extreme when you're talking about one lineup type builds.
Yeah, I was going to say, I thought my highest projected lineup had him and not Andre Jackson, but it looks like they have both. So no arguments with me. Yeah, no arguments with me on that one.
Yeah, you are allowed to play both, I suppose. But just for the sake of conversation, if you're trying to get away from the chalk that exists there with a multi-positional Andre Jackson, again, point guard, small forward, kind of a wild one. Even not as good as shooting guard, small forward usually, but for this specific slate where it all locks at the same time, not going to really dictate a ton of what I do. Just wanted to talk through it a little bit. Now let's go to the Spurs, because this is a team that has 3 of the 7 highest owned pieces. And as we're kind of taking a trip down the Sims here, we've got Jordan Klein pulling up everything there. Let's just kind of isolate some San Antonio Spurs, because yesterday, kind of a weird one. Chris Paul being somebody that they want to give more minutes to, I would think, on back-to-backs if he's going to just play 20. That second half got really, really wonky, and I talked about it a little bit on my betting show over on the Odd Shopper channel last night, but I was worried seeing the jump start that Houston got out on San Antonio, and I was like, I bet they're going to just pump that whole game and make sure everybody is there for this back-to-back. And sure enough, Wemby only plays 25 minutes. He is a massive piece of chalk. Chris Paul only plays 20 minutes. He's on a back-to-back. He's going to be a massive piece of chalk. I'm trying to parse through who I really want to be prioritizing on the San Antonio side. Julian Champagny as well. Champagny, however you want to say it there. He's a little bit overowned, but shooting guard, small forward is useful, especially if you're going to get away from Jackson. How are you feeling about San Antonio? Because I think they're in a very important part of this slate.
Yeah, I like San Antonio a lot, especially with what you said about last night. They didn't punt it, but once the game was out of hand, they sat their guys early, which is always the risk of playing guys on the front end of a back-to-back. It just is what it is. Saw it come to fruition last night. Now they're in a great spot against Portland. Like, man, I think that Giannis clearly projects better than Wemby. And it's not like Wemby's going to be unowned, but like if you wanted to take a stand on getting more Wemby than Giannis, I never mind stuff like that with studs. So I like Wemby a lot here. He's clearly the second highest projected player behind Giannis. So I think getting to both of them, and I also like Ant a lot. Like I think those 3 are the clear top guys, but there's a pretty big gap between each of them. So I think the biggest gap is between Wemby and Anthony Edwards. Between Giannis and Wemby, there's certainly a gap, but there's also a huge ownership gap. So I like Wemby a ton here, and he's burned me a couple times this year, but his upside, and I'm willing to embrace that variance in tournaments, is, I mean, I don't want to say higher than Giannis, but like right there with Giannis.
I would say, I mean, obviously we're getting Utah up against Milwaukee. I think that is definitely useful. Not that Portland is good, because they're awful. They're underlying.
Well, let me just ask you this.
It's absurd, but go ahead.
I'm like, in a neutral matchup, do you think these guys have the same upside, like the same exact upside, or do you think Giannis still has higher?
I think Giannis does. I mean, we just have a longer sample size. I feel more comfortable saying that. What Wemby does on a floor is ridiculous. Like Wemby defensively, especially for FanDuel purposes, I mean, he's a joke. 9 blocks against the Clippers, doing ridiculous stuff. Watch that whole game and just couldn't believe some of the stuff that he's able to do on the defensive end. With Chris Paul, though, on the floor, you're really not going to see that assist rate look any better. I know that that's been a popular prop, has been an under on Victor Wembanyama assists pretty much all year long across on OddsShopper. And you can look at that with Portfolio EV. You can definitely kind of take a look at everything that you have with Wemby on a day-to-day basis for spots like this. I don't think it was popping today last time I looked, because I'm usually checking in and pretty well apprised of those streets. But I still worry a little bit about when you're talking about raw projection and then what is the ultra ceiling. I mean, Giannis is putting up triple doubles, one every 5-6 games, basically, like going back to last year. I guess probably a little bit longer odds than that for sure. But basically, when you're modeling out Giannis, the assist rate is kind of the one thing that really takes hold. Like, he's averaging 6.3 per game in just 35 minutes a game so far. Obviously, that's more minutes than you probably want Giannis playing early in the season, but they have no bench. They have no other way of going there. And then
he just still has the hands in his ball a lot more than Wemby does.
And Wemby, 2.8 assists per game. His rebounds, his blocks, they're all going to be higher in terms of those rates, but it's kind of a minutes thing. I mean, you're averaging right around 30 for Wemby. So despite the fact that, I think their rates are probably pretty similar. On their best night,
I feel like it's close, because I feel like Wemby's best night is 12 blocks, 40 points, 15 boards with some threes.
Correct. But I look at Utah right now, and they're terrible defensively, 30th in adjusted defensive rating, dead last in my modeling, dead last in dunks and threes. And then pace, they're 6th, 102.3 possessions per 48 minutes. Portland's at 99.4. That's 19th in the NBA. So despite the fact that they are atrocious, they're mainly atrocious on the offensive end, where they're dead last in adjusted offensive rating on dunks and threes. But I'm definitely looking at this as the matchup plus the minutes plus nobody expects anything out of San Antonio. I think we can both expect things out of Giannis Antetokounmpo and Damian Lillard on the same team. They've been the most disappointing team in the NBA thus far.
Yeah, no doubt about it. They stink, man. They need this win. I know early season NBA, it doesn't really matter, but this roster kind of stinks outside of Giannis and Dame. Their defense is awful. They've lost to Cleveland twice already. This team, they're gonna have bigger problems, like Giannis wanting to leave if they don't turn it around soon.
Yeah, I'm waiting on a Spurs starting lineup too, because Stephon Castle isn't somebody that has to start. I'm assuming you will. That he'll continue to start here, but we'll see. Obviously, somebody also brought up that they're missing 3 of their best 5 players. I'm not going to put Trey Jones in their best 5 players on this team. That is for sure. But as much as I want to as a Dookie, but Devin Vassell, Jeremy Sohan.
Not anymore with Chris Paul too.
Yeah, I'll take point guard a little bit over Trey Jones at this point in time. Keldon Johnson off the bench. But I'm assuming we still get Castle starting here, and that'll be an interesting piece for me. But go ahead.
I feel like Trey Jones is in the Zach Collins mold. They're solid, but those other guys are better than them.
All right. Tell that to Bobby. We got a lot to get to here. We're almost, shit. How are we already at the halfway? This show's absolutely flying. We're talking about some nuanced stuff. We'll start building out our lineups here a little bit more concretely. Again, still an hour before lock, but of course, we're going to turn it over to NFL Live before lock. And you want to utilize the DFS sims here on the NBA side. You want to utilize it over in the NFL side. Well, there is a super easy, super efficient, super quick way to take advantage of that. And it is signing up with one of our 11 partners that are going to fly up here on your screen right now from Jordan Klein. We got Pick'em on the left side of the screen. We have on the right side of the screen, Sportsbooks. You have a great opportunity right now to take advantage of all of these great sites that have promotional signups. Underdog, you can get up to $1,000 for your first play over there. You can get Pick 6, Bet 5, get $50 over there. Sleeper has amazing stuff going on too. Bet 365, Bet 5, get $150. I'm here in the streets. I understand all of these, but I'm signed up at every single thing on your screen right now, and here's why. I want to shop for the best odds when I'm betting. I want to utilize the best pick'em sites when I'm playing pick'em. It doesn't matter where you're playing because, well, our tools are going to help you be able to curate and make money based on which sites you're playing. We have the Pick'em Optimizer over here at Stokastic. You can utilize that with the Sims, but you're going to get the DFS Sims for the NBA, for the NFL, for all of the sports that we offer here completely free just by checking out one of those partners. You have to follow 4 simple steps. You simply send those screenshots to support@Stokastic. That is support@Stokastic.com. And when you do, you're going to get The Sims for a month completely free, which is going to cover the NFL Thanksgiving slates. It's going to cover showdown slates. It's going to cover NBA. It's going to cover NBA showdown slates. There are so many great things coming. Plus, we got the play-in not the play-in tournament, but the in-season NBA tournament starting up here in a month. That's going to be covered within this same time frame. That is coming quicker than you could possibly believe. We're going to be covering those Tuesday games as they rotate through for a second straight year. Ended up being more fun than I expected. And plus, those DFS contests were insane as we started to see starters minutes ramped up. Starters that ended up playing 40, 42, played more like the postseason. It was really, really fun. You want to take advantage of it with the best data and the best team in the business. Come join us at Stokastic. Simply sign up with one of those partners at the link provided in chat or down at the link below. Alrighty, y'all. Back to The Sims we go. Again, this is what you can get completely free here, getting all the data. We're in the data hub, going through some of these. And what are some of the chalkier pieces you're landing on? We have Dante DiVincenzo pulling quite a bit of ownership at the same time that Mike Conley is pulling quite a bit of ownership. I really, really, really don't want to play them together in one lineup. If I'm playing more than one lineup, it's hard to not have them run into each other. They're both sub 5K. But like, God, these are the kind of situations today that are just very, very difficult to parse through. Who are some of the chalkier pieces that you really like for tournaments today, Matt?
Man, it's hard to get away from the cheap guys like Only. We talked about Andre Jackson. I like Dalen Terry a lot, like you do. I just feel like the few value pieces we have are good ones, and there just aren't that many pivots away from them in their price ranges. So I'm cool with riding the chalk value and then maybe getting a little bit different at stud.
Yeah, it definitely feels like one of those spots you can take advantage of just about any one of these cheap options, and it's going to be nice to put them with these studs, specifically Giannis. Are you getting to any Wemby whatsoever today? This is the toughest thing for me, trying to figure out like these Giannis and Wemby lineups, how to get different and not just have it be Dalen Terry and Dalen Terry and Mr. Ayo Dosunmu, even at 5,300, showing up in some lineups. Stephon Castle, God, Andre Jackson, Mega Chalk. I mean, this is just, I'm trying to find ways to be different. How are you getting different then, should I say, instead of some of these like chalkier pieces up top?
I mean, in NBA, I don't think you have to get all that different. Like, I think the few, you only need to get different with 1 or 2 spots in your lineup on most nights. And I think the chalky plays today look really, really good. So I think there's some spots that you can potentially get different. Like, I like Vooch. His price has gone up, but I think that ultimately he's the top dog there. Like all the Bulls guys we talked about, they're overpriced, but if they can stay in this game, condensed now. So like, we're excited about playing Dalen Terry at 3,200, but like, he's not good. We only like him at 3,200. The other guys are actually good. They're just priced up in a tough spot. So I think you can take a look there. I mean, Dosunmu's still getting love, and I don't really love him at that price point, although I do get he shot horribly yesterday. He does a lot of things. He's still only 5,300. So yeah, like, I'm not looking to get off the reservation on this slate, to be completely honest. I don't know about you.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I'm seeing a lot of chalk for sim lineups that I don't think we're going to be running into a crazy amount of dupes. I mean, I'm just kind of trying to figure out what the low-owned pieces are that I actually feel good about. They're low-owned kind of for a reason on this slate, if I'm going to be honest. Like, Giannis feels
right, that's
go ahead.
Like, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but like,
you're
low. There's a lot of slates where like last night, Kyrie Irving was really low owned, and like, he wasn't the best play, but it's still Kyrie Irving. Like today, the low owned pieces are like guys that most likely won't play well, but like, you could catch lightning in a bottle. And in NBA DFS, if you get 1 or 2 of those guys, you're in a good spot. There just aren't like low owned good players on this slate. Go ahead.
Now, I mean, I keep looking at these back-to-back teams, and this is maybe where we can lead into it. Are you getting any Talen Horton-Tucker today? How about Malachi Branham? I mean, these are the kind of guys that I think when you're playing more than one lineup, you really need to be paying attention to. And Jalen Smith, even 3,600 at center. We've got him a little bit under-owned in our tools as well. Tamani Kamara, somebody that is nobody wanted to really play at 5,100 with this fantasy point per minute rate, but in competitive spots, if this ends up being that, which against San Antonio, it has better chance of being competitive than just about any other Portland spot. I think you got to be considering some of these guys to be mixing in and hoping that the scales kind of tip in their direction. Blake Wesley, even where, he's going to be playing backup point guard minutes. He got up to 16 yesterday. I don't feel that confident here in this spot, but like Trey Jones still isn't back. Devin Vassell gets back, I think, next game. I think he'll be back on Saturday. And then we've got a couple of different pieces to kind of rotate through from other spots. But I brought up AJ Green, which is about as thin as I can possibly throw somebody out there. Maybe Sandro Mukashvili, who I've got in one of my 40 lineups that I'm playing as well. But I'm just curious if there's anybody on the cheap end here that you actually can make a case for, because Dalen Terry and Andre Jackson are so popular. I still think they're both very, 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 very volatile, despite that they're going to feel better than just about anybody else that you click on. But I'm trying to mix some of these other guys into lineups.
So couple things I have to say about that, because I think you're on the right track and I agree with you. I don't think there's one or two or three guys that stand out. I just think that there's such a real chance that Jackson and Terry actually suck. Not just they give you 15 points, but that they give you 5 or 6 points. And anyone else in that price range is better because those guys are going to be so chalky. The other thing that is making me think is maybe you just are lower on Giannis and Wemby and don't play those cheap guys, because other than Giannis and Wemby, you don't need the cheap guys. And Giannis and Wemby, especially Giannis, are in great spots, but it's not it's Giannis, Luka, Jokic, Wemby, it's LeBron. There's only Giannis and Wemby. So yeah, you see what I'm saying there?
Yep, 100% do. So somebody just said Sexton starting. He's been starting, but obviously we get Lauri Markkanen now in there starting. That's a different whole ball of wax altogether. You go back. Oh, Utah, what a frustrating basketball team in general. Let's go back 2 games here to Monday. There we are. Just going through some of their rotations, and you got Colin Sexton, you got Kyle Filipowski, who now will not be starting instead of Lauri Markkanen. We had Sexton already starting. That's not going to change it. What does change there is that now you have a guy who's going to lead this team in usage, lead this team in terms of pretty much any opportunity in terms of minutes. You would think they said they're not going to have minutes restrictions, him and Jordan Clarkson. But with both of them back here, Jordan Clarkson was terrible. He got benched there at the tail end of that last game against the Spurs, despite being the guy who was starting. And yeah, probably more utilized. He's an entire NBA career has been utilized as a 6th man. I think that'll make more sense for them here. So it's not saying limitations, but it's basically limitations. My big problem is everybody's priced up besides Lauri Markkanen for the situation. So any other Utah piece is just not appealing whatsoever for me right now. In fact, is there any Utah piece that you're getting to more than Lauri Markkanen? I have Walker Kessler in a little bit more.
Yeah, I am getting to Walker Kessler here quite a bit. Other than that, I am getting to no Utah, a little bit of Markkanen, a little bit of Clarkson, but I am getting to a significant amount of Kessler.
What is this person talking about? Sexton was off the bench last few. He was literally a starter on Monday, their last basketball game they played. I don't know what to tell you. What do you want from me? What do you want from me? Yes, NFL Live Before Lock will be here on Stokastic in all of 21 minutes. So we'll be able to talk through the NFL game, which is going to be just a shootout and really, 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 really fun. We've got a massive total sitting there now, and also some really cool offers from a couple of different books to be paying attention to. I don't think we have that read on here, do we, Jordan Klein? Do I want to tell the people about you know what? You know where? You know what I'm talking about. You literally don't know? Whatever. I have super chats to talk about. F you, Jordan Klein. I don't even need you. Olrat 14, $2. Would you play Jalen Smith over 3K chalk? DK.
Oh my God.
Jalen Smith, 3,600.
Just about to ask you about Jalen Smith, because no matter what I change in my Sims, bumping a couple guys or doing whatever,
it's lovely.
He's showing up in my top ROI lineup every single time. I don't get it, but He's 3,600. There isn't a ton of value. We know he can produce when he's on the court. Like, Bulls are on a back-to-back. I mean, there's a lot of scenarios where I could see him getting there. I just don't really get it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's brutality. I mean, there's not a lot else to say about it. I'm just kind of going through some of the fantasy point per minute rates on all these guys. I mean, he's a 1.1 fantasy point per minute guy. He should be backing up the center here. He's sub 4K. I love on short slates. I think this is something I used to talk about with Rinpack all the time on the Slate Starter podcast back in the day, where if something happens to Vooch, be it they're on a back-to-back, he played 25 minutes yesterday. Like, I don't think that's going to be enough to really. Like,
I wish he had played more
today. I wish he had too. And then you could definitely be saying, hey, I want to play Jalen Smith on the back-to-back. They might want to limit his minutes. Now it's like the inverse, but there's also foul trouble that starters tend to get into from time to time. Vooch has been pretty good at avoiding them. In fact, I don't think he's had over 4 fouls in a game this entire season, which is a weird thing to know off the top of my head, but it is what it is. I was kind of looking at backup centers from each one of these teams. I looked at the Donovan Clingan fellow, who his fantasy point per minute rate isn't as good, but 1.1 for Jalen Smith, I think is really appealing. In the Sims, they're really emphasizing that as a piece of chalk that we should like today. I mean, he's not crazy chalky by any means, but currently a lot less chalky than the Andre Jacksons, than the Dalen Terrys of the world.
You're still talking about Jalen Smith?
Yes, correct.
Yeah, like I'm surprised he's showing up in 20% of lineups. Like, maybe I'm just off on him. He looks good. Like, he's in 30% of my lineups, and I'm playing a couple in the 555, and he's going to be in at least one of them. So I'll tell you that much. Like, you know what? I trust the Sims. I don't trust the Sims as Bible, but they're smarter than me.
Oh yeah. I'm not going to call it the Bible by any means, but yes, I'm definitely going to call it like, I'm going to call it like an almanac, if you will. It's definitely going to guide you. It's going to guide you a little bit, tell you a little bit about everything that you should know on the slate, and also give you the opportunity to learn a little for yourself, which is like the fun part of the uniques, the fun part about lineup filtering and figuring out how to quickly get to where you're trying to go. And for me, I'm trying to get different and unique. And that's where Austin Tilley asks us with another $2 super chat. THT over Terry Smith can unlock unique. So he's wondering, it's more of a statement than it is a super chat question, but THT over Terry/Smith. He's thinking that that's a good way to get unique on today's slate. You got THT. He's dynamite up to a 4K. I'm biased. He went to Iowa State, like I'm with all these guys, but yeah, THT not in nearly as many lineups as what it would appear he was in for me yesterday.
Oh, he's 4K now?
4K now.
Yeah, like, I guess I clearly don't like him as much, 25% price increase. But, like, if you told me either him or Dalen Terry got 35 fantasy points, it's definitely him.
I need DeAndre Ayton love today.
Yeah, he's the other guy, man. I kind of like the Spurs. And on the other, that's like the game that's not getting a lot of love. And on slates like this, it just doesn't take much from the other two games. I think this game's competitive. Portland's been a little bit better this year. What's the line on this game?
It was like 3.5, 4, kind of like meandering back and forth all day. It was at 2.5 at open yesterday.
Far expected to be the closest game on the board. Like, if 2 games blow out and 1 doesn't, you would obviously expect this one not to. So, like, I'm not playing it because of that, but that doesn't make me like it any less. Like, people often ask about game stacks and stuff like that. Like, I don't think that, 99% of the time it doesn't apply, and it doesn't apply tonight for me. But, like, you could tell yourself a story where, like, the Utah-Milwaukee game and the Minnesota-Chicago games are over, like, halfway through the third quarter, where guys will get there but not be amazing. And if you happen to get the overtime Portland game, like, you're in a really good spot. That's all I'll say about that.
I love that. Somebody threw something into chat, and I'm just going to say it out here. Javier Hernandez. Need more stack theory today. If you think Giannis is going off, someone has to step up from Utah. Same with Wemby/Portland. That is not true in any way, shape, or form. Giannis and Wemby can get there and smash and put up 80 in games that you don't necessarily need anything else from. NBA is completely different. You just don't need to think about them in those terms. The reason that you're seeing such insane ownership on Giannis is he has multiple positions. He's the highest fantasy performer projected by 7.5 fantasy points here at Stokastic. And you just really want the raw points if you can build a lot of value around it, because even a weak game, a 55, has a chance of being optimal, or, something that could still end up winning you a tournament there. With Giannis, there would have to be a lot of things that would end up happening as you run this slate out multiple times. Again, 77% chance to be optimal is a pretty large number on a 3-game slate for an $11,100 price player. And it really comes down to that boom percentage. Like, boom bust tool, going back to that, as far as how many lineups he could fall into it. It's 5x plus 10. That's always been like the way the boom bust thinks about things. He's got like a 55 or 56% boom percentage last time I looked. I'm going to refresh and take a look. But I mean, my God, Giannis just has so many outs to being and winning lineups. And
Right.
you don't need something else to stack. Like, a lot of people think about it, oh, I want to bring something else back from the game. We talked about that a lot with John Morant yesterday. He ends up getting hurt, only played 20 minutes. But the fact remained where you had a lot of pieces from the Lakers side that were appealing. You might want to bring something from Memphis along for the ride when you have 3-4 players from it. But an individual entity like Giannis, or an individual entity in basketball, period, I'm never thinking about stacking them.
And I'll even say this to your point. Like, I get your point, and this isn't even your main point, and I was talking about this the other day, even in situations like that, and last night was a perfect example. I think there are times where if you're playing 3 or 4 guys from a team, depending on how expensive they are, you got to at least think about running it back. But like Denver last night, my top lineup, which finished like top 20 in the big 5-5-5, had 4 Nuggets and no OKC. So I think the overrating, and you have to do it, is a little bit overblown.
Bob Johnson, 55. If we got 55 from Giannis tonight, I think there's a very good chance he still ends up optimal. Because Wemby is projected for like 54 fantasy points, period. So if we're saying that's going to be his mean outcome there, my God, there are tons of ways that Giannis can still end up being there. Obviously, you would want to get something north of 60, 61, but the whole point of him pulling 70% ownership is his likelihood of showing up in those lineups. So yes, that is truly math and what I am thinking about here, but we can have that conversation on a different day, not on a 3-gamer. And well, we got 12 minutes before NFL. We don't even go up to lock here with this. Violet Citizen, €2. That's fantastic. We're getting Euro on this show. What a time to be alive, Matt Belman. But thoughts on Shaden Sharp? Shaden Sharp. I added that last part.
Coming off the bench, not interested tonight.
Can't do it. I wish I could do it. I want to have the balls to take shots on a 5,200 Shaden Sharp. My problem is Scoot Henderson's been crazy too. He's north of 25% usage, 30% assist rate off the bench. I mean, Shaden Sharp now coming in as well, and point guard only. Like, this is going to be a cluster F. It's not going to be an enjoyable experience. I'm not looking forward to it.
How expensive is he?
5,200 on DK.
Yeah, he's not cheap enough.
I mean, I can't project him for enough minutes. We have him for
16
fantasy points.
He's way cheap enough for the normal Shaden Sharp, but like 15 minutes, right? First game back. No thanks.
I will be back, Eric, tomorrow for that conversation. Bob Johnson, I promise you, if Giannis puts up over 55, he has a very, 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 very good chance of being optimal, even underperforming his projection. I promise you. There's 4 different lineup spots that he can show up in.
I would say he has a much better chance of being in the winning lineup than optimal.
That's probably the right way of saying it. He can still show up in a winning lineup. I'd say 60 or more, he's like a lock to be optimal, but
agreed. But like if he goes like in the mid 50s and like a random guy who's like not getting any ownership, like, you know what I mean? Like just Patrick Williams or whatever goes for like 40. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. I mean, the Sims have me getting, let me double check this. I'm going to save my last 50 because I'm playing 40 lineups. So I'm just going to take my top Sim RO lineups from it. 94% Giannis Antetokounmpo. That's a spicy meatball. I love it. I'm not going to change it. I'll tell Eric. What did I do? Which one? I got them all. Phil Senzig and Salah Abdallah, $4.99. FanDuel GPP 1 lineup, Alexander Walker and Vooch, or DiVincenzo and Kessler. It is definitely going to be that second one for me.
Agreed.
Phil Sensig, $1.99. No Sexton, question mark. Guards torturing Bucks. Clarkson, 2. Now, Clarkson won't be on a minutes limit. My big issue here is Keontae George is now overpriced for the situation with Lauri Markkanen back, although I'd been playing him a lot leading up to it. Colin Sexton, 6,200, overpriced for the situation. Clarkson, 5,400. It's a little bit cheaper. I'd be more inclined to take shots on Clarkson than Sexton at this point in time, considering he doesn't have to deal with potentially Lauri Markkanen minutes. He has the second unit. Probably that first rotation of Jordan Clarkson's ball. I would think that it'll be absent Lauri Markkanen. There's a chance Jordan Clarkson just comes out and chucks. It's generally what he comes out and does. His assist rated looked all right in the early going of the season, up to like 3.5 assists per game and 24 minutes per game. So yeah, things were tracking on for right around 5 assists per 36. But as I look at Jordan Clarkson, that's probably the only other guy that I want to take shots on from Utah. Do you have any Keontae George, Colin Sexton, any of these other guys?
Man, I kind of agree with what Spags said on Keontae George. And I'm a huge Keontae George fan in general, but he needs to shoot well to get there. He did last game. I don't really want to go back there. He's not cheap enough, but he's like a guy like where you can, like, if you want to build in the mid tier, where I'd be looking at, you know?
Exactly. I love what Obi-Wan said. Let's not get cute on a 3-game slate. 3-game slate, Giannis will be there. Played enough of them to know. I mean, I just think that
honestly, the reason to not play Giannis is not because like you think he's going to do bad. It's because he's going to be 80% owned, and tournaments are won by, you need to win tournaments. Like coming in third, fourth, you know what I mean, are fun, but like you need wins. So like,
correct.
That's the case for fading Giannis, is he's going to be that highly owned. And I don't think it's a smart move, but you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Yeah, no, I know exactly what you're saying. And then Self 213, last super chat, I believe, here that we had to get to. Unless RADM, I'm assuming that one got answered by Josh. Okay, perfect. Self 213, $2. Do y'all think Tamani Kamara will go over 16.5 PRA? A little page that people probably aren't all that aware of here. We have the NBA Advanced Stat Projections page that you can pull up over at Stokastic. We can type that in for Mr. Tumani Kamara, and we can pull that up on screen if Jordan pulls that up, or I can pull it up here on my own. I'm going to add this up because we've got him for 5.3 rebounds, 2.1 assists, that's 7.4. Add that to 8.8, that's going to be 16.2. And when you account for VIG minus 110, I'm just assuming on both sides of that one. Some books, FanDuel introduced stuff in NFL at minus 113 and such, well, on both sides of it, just to, protect themselves to some extent, or in their minds, protect themselves. It's been a sharper book this year. I think Tamari Kamara is perfectly efficient at that number. I would be leaning towards the under based on that information. 31.5 minutes. You get Shaden Sharp back. You get some of these other pieces back that it's kind of a congested situation there in Portland now, Matt.
Yeah, Ayton's really the only guy I like. I think that he's I don't want to say their best offensive player, but the guy with the least competition around him. Like, ultimately, I think Simons is probably their best player right now, but like, there's so many guards in Portland on any given night, you never know. Ayton's their guy in the middle. So if this game is close, like, he's going to be out there, he's going to do his thing. I don't love him. I never do, but on a slate like this, where I think he's probably a little bit underowned and has upside, I'm cool with it.
All right, we've got 6 minutes left to go. We're coming down to the wire. I think we're going to probably get ourselves out of here like a minute or two early to give them time to flip over to the NFL Live Before Lock, to give all of you guys time to flip over to the NFL Live Before Lock show. We've covered things pretty in depth. We'll finish it all out and talk about our highest owned players, or some of our favorite contrarian players. But this is the point of the program, and I know Jordan Klein's just been itching. He's been sitting there clawing, waiting, wishing that I would bring up Nuke of the Night. So it is time, Jordan Klein, to blow off my little thing. Wasn't little, now it's little. Anyway, we've got the Nuke of the Night coming your way, my friends. Matt Belman, the people need to know, they have to know, who is your favorite tournament play relative to ownership on today's 3-game NBA slate?
Oh, tough question, but I'm going to go with a guy that we talked about just a little bit ago, Walker Kessler.
Oh boy.
The defensive stats are monster. Even with Markkinen in, I don't think it hurts him that much. They're still light on bodies inside. I like Kessler a lot here.
I'm torn between two guys because there's one that feels a little bit too chalky. Dante DiVincenzo, I really like for this slate. You're going up against Chicago where the pace is up, up, up. They're playing at the fastest pace in the NBA. They're on a back-to-back. And Dante DiVincenzo, I think there are games like this where the Bulls would prefer to have Mike Conley play fewer minutes and have Dante DiVincenzo go out and smash. Like, it's a weird slate because Tuesday, Wednesday, they had off, which should make it lean towards an NBA vet. But I still think these are the spots where DiVincenzo could go completely nutties and they just keep him on the floor against a weak Chicago team and we call it a day there. But I got to give some love, some props to an absolute stud that I think is coming in a little bit underutilized on today's slate. And that is the one, the only, Jalen Smith. 3,600. I don't see any way around it. Chicago Bulls on a back-to-back. This goggled freak is going to go out and smash souls. I feel really good about Jalen Smith here in this spot. He is showing up a lot in the Sims and with our tools here at Stokastic today. He's only going to be a guy who plays like mid-teens minutes, but there are lots of ways that backup centers walk into more minutes. And when they're 3,600 with 1.1 fantasy point per minute rates, you know they're going to see the floor in some capacity, and then there's still an upside for them to achieve. 20% for him for $100 more than Andre Jackson. Ooh, I feel so damn good about it for tournaments. He's less than half the ownership. I love Jalen Smith for tournaments. My nuke of the night.
Was that a little Michael Jackson?
It sure was.
Okay. Love it. Love it.
You've been struck by a smooth criminal. Dun, 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 dun. I always want to do like the Alien Ant Farm version because it's better, but that's just me. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do. I just thought you were going to add something onto that. I always like it when you incorporate musicians or movies or all that. Yeah, love it.
That's what I'm here for. Matt Belman, it is so good to be hanging out with you, talking through NBA slates. Why don't you tell the people where they can find you? I want to just, I really appreciate you. I appreciate doing these shows, and obviously Greg and Lafayette are coming up here next, so we'll get ourselves going so we can get that NFL started right here for the people at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. You don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to change that dial. Just click that Stokastic button down in the corner. At the same time, you can hit the like button before you head on out of here. Tell the people where to find you.
You can find me on Twitter at Fantasy Tips Matt, and you can find me on Stokastic doing my daily NBA or NFL contrarian article.
I will throw it out there one more time for the people. The DFS Sims tools, they're completely free. When you sign up at one of those sites, you've got 32 minutes to take advantage. You fire up anything. You send the screenshot of your first bet and of settled wager, and you're going to have an awesome opportunity to get yourself a little bit of Sims tool in your life. It's going to be great stuff. So smash the like button. Eric has never been okay. That is very, very true. But Annie, is she okay? I hope so, Annie. Let's get ourselves out of here. Smash the like button. Thank you, Jordan Klein. NFL Live Before Lock coming up next.